Hi everyone, Jelica here from prettyfix.com and welcome back to my channel. Today I thought I would share with you how to finish off a weaving using the half Damascus edge. Now the half Damascus edge is a great way to finish off a piece where you don't want any fringe, you don't want any detail along the edges. I'm actually working on some pieces for my Etsy shop and I'm working on the last piece, so I thought, hey, I'm sure that my YouTube followers would love to find an alternative method to finishing off a weaving that is clean, that's neat and tidy, without all the frills of a fringe. So if you're ready to learn the half Damascus edge, then you'll want to stick around. Okay, so this is the piece that we're going to be working on. You can see that it's just been taken off the loom. Now there are only a couple of supplies that you'll need for this. I use a bent tip needle. You can see it's just bent, curved on the end. I'll leave a link in the description box for this. And of course you'll need a pair of scissors, any pair will do. And as well, I brought myself a measuring tape. You'll need this just to measure out your edges, make sure that everything is tickety-boo. First thing I'm gonna do is cut the loops here along the edge. And I'm going to want to make sure that the warp strings are as long as possible because it makes it much more difficult to create the half Damascus edge when I've got you know, exceptionally short pieces. And I'm going to do this same thing on the opposite side. Now, it doesn't matter which side you start with. For some reason, I like starting on the bottom. So what you're going to do is you're going to flip it over to the back side. So for the half Damascus edge, you'll want to start on the right side or the left. It doesn't really matter. I start on the right side because I'm right-handed. If you decide to start on the opposite side, you do the exact same thing, but it'll be a mirror image. So take the right one over top of the next one. And the one that's on top is going to continue to travel underneath, and then you're going to poke it through the loop, okay? And then you're going to grab a hold of that, pull on that until you kind of reach the edge of the weaving, okay? And just kind of hold that steady. And then the bottom one, you're going to want to pull towards yourself very gently, and then maybe just give it a bit of a tug. And then you've created your first knot, and that's it. So this will stay at the top, this will stay at the bottom, and this one now is the one that you'll begin with to create your second knot. So you're going to take that, same thing, place it over top of the next warp string, and that's the one that will travel underneath that second warp string to go under and up through that loop. You'll grab that, you'll pull that up towards the weaving until it's right close to the edge, and then you'll take that second one and you'll pull it to create the knot. Not too tightly, because as you can see, if I keep pulling, it tugs the weaving towards that end. So you don't really want to do that. You want to create a knot that just reaches the edge but doesn't pull on the weaving too tightly. Okay, and then you're going to continue on all the way to the end. And when you're creating those knots, you're going to want to follow sort of the general trajectory of the warp strings. So what I mean by that is you're always going to be following the lines of the warp strings of your piece. You can actually see you know, where they've ended up. And so when you're pulling, you're always going to pull straight up and straight down. You don't want to have it angled this way because you're just going to create a deformed piece. So always want to kind of go straight up and down when you're creating those knots. And here's another thing that I want to just share with you. So here I am, I pulled this right up to the top so that this is right at the edge. It can be tempting to pull the knot this way. And the reason you don't do that is because then this string will end up too far out this way. The knot will then be far out that way. And then when you try to create the next knot, it's going to be too far from the next one. And then you're going to start to pull a little bit in the opposite direction, in a direction that you don't want. You want each knot to fall directly under the next warp string. So just be real careful. You know, you might want to even like overshoot if you've accidentally pulled the knot, pulled the warp string rather to the right. And so this way you create a knot that's sort of dead center right underneath that warp string. So just be real careful with how you create those knots. Once you reach a certain point, you'll want to do a bit of a check, just to make sure that the bottom edge is matching the top edge of your weaving. So what I like to do is take a measuring tape, and you can't really see it on camera, but I'm just checking to see if it's the same edge to edge. So I've got it at about 10.5 inches here, and then I'm going to measure here edge to edge, and it's at about 10.5 inches here. So I think I'm doing all right. All is good in my world. When I get to the end, this is what you'll want to see. All of these warp strings will be flat against the piece, and then you'll have one dangling one. So that's really not a big deal, because at the end, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be weaving in all of these ends into the back side of the piece. And so this won't show through at all. So you're not going to really want to worry about that. So we're going to now work on the other side to create the same effect. So now we're going to want to weave in all these ends, and you're going to weave them into the natural channels of the weaving itself. And what I mean by channel is where those warp strings naturally are. You can actually see the bumps here. This is where all those warp strings are. Typically what I do is I'll first start by finding that natural channel. You can actually see this is where that warp string, one of the warp strings goes through. So you'll want to find a channel, and then you'll want to thread your needle. So I've threaded it just enough so I can continue to feed it through. And so you can see it's woven in. Usually I'll weave it in about 5 or 6 woven rows in, and then I'll cut this off, and then you won't see that on the good side, which is on this side. So I'm going to continue weaving in all of these ends and then I will show you the finished piece. Okay, so now I have woven in all of the warp strings on both sides, and now I can fiddle around with it if I want to. I can pull on the warp strings to even out the edges. I'm pretty happy with the way it's turned out. So really at this point, all I really need to do is cut off the warp strings. So you want to cut them off as close to the edge as possible without cutting your weaving. And you can just see how that half Damascus edge just finishes off the weaving so beautifully. It just creates a nice fringeless look to your weaving, for those of you who are looking for that kind of look to your woven pieces. Well, I hope that you enjoyed today's weaving tutorial. I loved bringing you guys along for the ride. If you did, then give the video a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel. And then head on over to aprettyfix.com, my blog, where you will find loads more crafts, decor, and DIY tips for your home. Well, until next time, everybody, take care.